can't bring him in to compete for the job. He's not going to do it with Deshaun Watson. He's not going to do it, period. That's not who he is. He views himself as a former number one pick, a guy that won in Cleveland. He's got a chip on his shoulder. That's good. It's all good. But he does not view himself as a bridge guy. That's why the Pittsburgh Steelers talked about Baker, but in the end got Trubisky and a rookie. Trubisky will play the game, It's this is what you're seeing right now. Drew Lock and Geno Smith, you could do it, but if Drew Lock and Baker Mayfield, those egos together in Seattle, would be a tire fire. Here's the reality with Baker right now. There's really, and we said this right after the season, be careful, Baker. There's not going to be a market for Baker Mayfield. Remember, next year's quarterback class is great. It is 6 guys. The over-under on first-round quarterbacks next year is 6.5. There's 3 I love, 3 I'll wait and see. But there's a lot of teams, for instance, Houston, Atlanta, Seattle, are positioning themselves for the next draft. So let's look at the entire NFL landscape, all the teams. I would argue 26 teams have a quarterback that they view as the franchise guy or he's our guy for a couple of years. That would include Matt Ryan and Carson Wentz. That's virtually the entire league. Again, Tua. They're not moving off Tua for Baker Mayfield now. So that team's out. And I think Tua is going to have some success with those offensive pieces. So Miami's decision is going to be at the end of the year, hey, Tua is actually pretty darn good. So that leaves the Texans, the Giants, the Seahawks, the Saints, the Falcons, and the Panthers. But as I just said, I think Seattle, Houston, and Atlanta are going to ride with their guys, and they're positioning themselves for next year. The owners are comfortable with it. Texans, it depends on how the young guy from Stanford plays. He may end up being the guy, but they're positioning themselves. That leaves you with the Giants, the Saints, and the Panthers. The problem being with the Giants, the Saints, and the Panthers is Baker would have to compete for that job with Sam Darnold, with Daniel Jones, with Jameis Winston. He doesn't want to compete. And so I think those teams think Baker is better than the guy they have, but that's not his personality. And that is why I always say with quarterbacks, personality matters. I don't care if my receivers get along with other players. I got 8 of them. I never understand when all the fanboys out there defend the Johnny Manziels and the Bakers. I'm like, you do get, if the first team doesn't go right, you're going to struggle in this league to get a second job because you're too big of a personality to be a backup. You can't Johnny Manziel back. You couldn't, Tim Tebow, I didn't worry about the ego. You couldn't have Tim Tebow as a viable backup. I mean, Mark Sanchez admitted with the Jets, it was too distracting. So you can come in with all this chutzpah and all this arrogance and all this, branding, but you better get the best one right, the first one right. Guys like Chase Daniel can be in this league forever. Marcus Mariota doesn't have a brand. There's like Colt McCoy. You can be in this league for a long time. Tyrod Taylor. If you're just like, hey, man, I love football. I'll work in the room. I mean, Marcus Mariota is actually getting a second chance now to be the guy. Now, I don't think he'll end up being healthy for the entire season, but he's getting that run, and a lot of it is he works well with others. So come in with all your ads, come in with all your chutzpah, but if the first gig doesn't go right, you become a bridge at best. Nobody wants to build around you, and we don't think we can bring you in the room to be a backup because Baker is absolutely one of the 25 most talented quarterbacks in the league. What's the market? And TJ Houshmandzadeh said this yesterday on the show. Here's the issue.
He's a solid quarterback. It's his personality and the way he talks and just goes about things. I don't mind the attitude that Baker has, and I've said this 1,000 times. Baker, you got this chip on your shoulder. You were the first pick, bro. Like, you were the first pick of the draft. Why do you have this chip on your What happened in high school and college, that is no longer the case. You were the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. Stop talking and go play.
Now, if Cleveland picks up, gobbles up, eats up a majority of this contract, he's going to get a gig somewhere. He's just too good and too cheap not to give a job. I'm not sure where it will be. Maybe it is Atlanta. Maybe they're like, Marcus, you've been a backup before, you're a backup again. But that's what I say. The media falls in love with the quarterback out of college, the brand, Cam Newton, Tim Tebow, Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield, the brand. If you don't get the first one right, that career evaporates really fast. It's a very cruel world for quarterbacks. I don't care if linebackers, running backs, anybody, safeties, you can bring all that ego from college. I kind of like it. I kind of like the edge. Not at quarterback. You're the face of the franchise. Quentin Richardson's co-host of the Knuckleheads podcast for the Players Tribune. 13 years in the NBA, former director of player development for the Detroit Pistons. He is now joining us. So I'm just going to lay the Celtics and the Heat out for you. As somebody who's been in control of an NBA team's player development, I said this about the Celtics. Chris Middleton getting hurt was a break. Miami, Lowry hurt. Butler hurt is a break. Philadelphia, Brooklyn, a little bit of a chemistry mess. This is the year for Boston, to me, Quentin, to make the run. If they can't win this series, do you start looking inside the organization saying, listen, we like all of our young guys, but we have hit a ceiling here with Jalen and Marcus and Tatum and Williams. What do you do if they lose this series to rickety, older, injured Miami?
I don't get do anything drastic, man. I feel like this is really their first run at it under Coach Ime Udoka and his leadership and the new coaching staff and everything going the way that they're doing things. So if I'm them, win, lose, or draw, I'm right back at it next year. You know, you try and obviously tinker with things and make things better, but I don't mess with Tatum and Brown and the core guys. I try and add to it.
Okay, so now let's pivot to the Mavericks. There's a lot of talk, Quentin, about what to bring with Luka. And listen, his usage rate is really high. So he's not going to work with everybody. You can't get him another high usage rate guy. It's going to be the right complement of player. Like the other day, Joy and I talked about Donovan Mitchell. And I'm like, Donovan plays defense. I think his Utah thing, they may be moving on. Rudy Gobert gets mentioned. He's a great defender. It's either one of those Utah guys to you interesting with Luka.
I think Rudy Gobert would be interesting with him, not Donovan, because like you said, they both have high usage rates. I feel like Donovan needs the ball, not as much as Luka, but he needs it a lot more than he would get it playing with Luka. But I think Rudy could fit because obviously he's a defensive big. They lacking in the paint as far as like a true big that can, protect the paint, protect the rim, and go get rebounds. But I think, Rudy is a big that doesn't necessarily need post-ups. He's a good guy who can pick and roll. He's a good lob threat at the rim. And then, like you say, he's going to be that lockdown defender in the paint, three-time defensive player of the year. I mean, I think he would fit great with Dallas.
Does it bother you that Luka doesn't come in shape and doesn't give a great effort consistently on the defensive end?
The conditioning thing is more of a concern for me. I mean, there's plenty of, very offensive dominant players of his caliber or more that, don't play the greatest defense. I mean, I think he can work on his effort with it, but I think more so that, him being so young and the conditioning is the bigger deal for me because usually when you're at your youngest age is when it's easier for you to come in and you still looking slim and trim. And so for him to be this young and battling that now, it worries me for the future that if he doesn't get a hold on to it, because I mean, the natural progression is we all get, as we get older, we gain weight and things like that. So if he's battling that right now, that just is kind of in my mind for the future of him.
So you look at the Warriors team. And we've been talking about this on the show, that they really do a good job doing a couple of things. One, they surround Steph Curry with a lot of guys that can defend multiple positions. Peyton's going to come back in the finals. Wiggins is very good. Dre's been good forever. Even Kevin Durant's a long, willing defender. Looney now is an excellent rebounder, playing much better defense. So they know what Steph is and what he isn't. The other thing is they draft and develop really well. They always find these guys. Kuminga's another guy I think has a great upside.
Yeah.
When you look at the Warriors dynasty, it started pre-KD, then they had it with KD. Many people suggest after this one they're done. Do you see a tail on this? How long does it last? Because Dre's older, Clay's older, Steph's older. What do you make of the next 5 years, the next 5 for Golden State?
I mean, I think they dictate their own destiny, man. I mean, people didn't expect them to be back here at this point. They didn't expect Clay to come back and play as well as he's played or be as healthy. So, I mean, for me, I can't put a ceiling on these guys and try and say they're going to be done at this point or that point. I think, we're seeing a new dynamic of what a prime in your career is. LeBron is at 37 years old. 17, 18 seasons still going strong. So, I mean, I can't discount and say that these guys are going to be done because, I mean, the way that Steph plays, the way that Clay plays, Draymond, they don't really rely on some dynamic athletic ability. I mean, Steph is the greatest shooter. Clay is probably the next best or one of the top best shooters ever. So, I mean, they rely heavily on their shooting ability. So I think with that being said and the way that they play selfless and they really play team